Hey there, Ian Ugarte from smallisnewbig.com.au, and today I want to talk about the APRA changes and how it's affecting and why the government are making different changes, and APRA has made changes as well. Obviously, we had a very heated market in Sydney and Melbourne. The APRA changes 3 or 4 years ago actually skyrocketed prices and did a negative effect. They actually did the reverse of what was supposed to happen. And so by limiting banks to doing what they were doing, sophisticated investors like myself and other people got thrown out of the market, and unsophisticated investors pushed the market in an upward direction. Well, that correction now had to happen because obviously when in any cycle at the high there has to be a low, and we're coming down to the low in Sydney and Melbourne, remembering that the rest of the marketplaces around the country act at different cycles, and the rest of the country isn't acting like Sydney and Melbourne. Like Brisbane still hasn't moved. We haven't had a move in Perth and Darwin yet. Perth I believe has hit the bottom of a really long fall. In Perth you are buying properties today for what you were buying them in 2008. Why? Because of a hugely overinflated marketplace that was related to resources as well. Now, APRA has made some recent changes in the marketplace by removing the cap on the lending fraternity. So that is, previously you had to, if I have a portfolio of loans, which we do, the banks would look at all our portfolio at a minimum of 7.25% principal and interest, which means that your income gets bashed to pieces. Now, APRA has just recently dropped that and said that, look, we need to have a limit. We want you to be at least 2 to 2.5% above what the standard mortgage rate right now. Now, there's mortgage rates around the country that I've seen recently at 3.5%. That means that they have to calculate your interest payments across your portfolio of existing mortgages at somewhere between 4.5% to 5%. 5% to 5.5%. Now that means that you've got the flexibility of your income now being able to borrow more money. But why did they do that? You see, because there's been a huge downturn on the amount of loans that are being written out into the marketplace. And they are very, very concerned that the marketplace and the whole economy is actually going to go into a place of negative growth. So when we've got a GDP growth or negative growth in the marketplace, we then have what we call a recession. So if we get 2 quarters of negative growth, we are technically in a recession, even if it's just a minor negative growth. Now, the government doesn't want that, because governments don't like recessions. And ultimately, you might say, well, taxes have also dropped for some income earners, which means that there's more income that's available to be able to go out and get more loans, to put more into housing and possibly into the stock market as well. Now, APRA have made those changes because they've realised that they overstimulated the market to start with, and then they understimulated the market, so they're starting to try to stimulate again. Now, I know there's a number of commentaries that are going around and they're saying, wow, this looks very much like America pre-2008, the GFC time. Taxes have been dropped. We've got really low interest rates, the lowest the country in Australia has ever seen, and the same that happened in America. And, you know, we've got a housing market that was stimulated and now it's come off the boil. All hell is going to break loose. Let me talk to you on a couple of different points around that. Firstly, America had built a huge amount of houses. There was a massive oversupply of housing, and people were going into housing everywhere, buying and getting into investing and doing whatever they wanted to. In America, the way that lending works is that it's not, you don't have to be stuck in that loan. You can literally walk away from a property. You can hand that property back. You'll have a credit rating hit that will last for about somewhere between 2 to 5 years. You can go out, get a credit card, get a Walmart card, pay it off on time for 2 years, you'll get your credit rating back, and you go in and get another loan. So effectively in America, not like Australia, in America you can hand the loan back and you can say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, you guys made a mistake by giving me that loan, I'm giving you the property back and I'm off. That's the cause of the GFC, because you see the amount of people that handed properties back and the amount of loans that were out there had to have this snowball effect that affected the whole of America, and of course the rest of the world got affected by that as well. In Australia, you cannot walk away from your mortgage. Yes, there are more people going into bankruptcy. Yes, there are more people that are in default in mortgages. I absolutely agree. The stimulation that happened because of the APRA changes has put people in really bad situations. We've also had mining that's put people in bad situations 6, 7, 8 years ago. And so in Australia though, if you hand back a mortgage, you are basically tied up for the next 10 to 12 years because you will have a mark against your name. Not so in America. So can that happen in Australia? I very much doubt that what happened in the GFC in America can happen in Australia. The second part to this too is that if it did happen in Australia, let's look at what happened in America. The GFC hit, property prices dropped somewhere between 40 to 45% as an average across the whole of America. Within the space of 3 years, those property prices that were pre-GFC were now reached in 2010 and 11. And if you were a smart investor, as an Australian, and you went over to the US, not only would you have had the benefit of being able to buy properties really cheap, you would have had the benefit of also the currency rate, because the Australian dollar peaked at $1.07, $1.08, sometimes $1.10 depending on the day. So not only did you buy property really well over there, that actually increased by 40, 50 or 60% from the time you bought it in 2009 and 10, but you also had a 30% increase on the value of the dollar that you took over to the US at the time. Now, not everyone did that. Only very few people did that. Why? Well, sophisticated investors had a desperate understanding and knowledge that that was probably going to happen. When Australia has reasonably sat on their Australian dollar at somewhere between 50 to 65, 70 cents for a very long time according to the US dollar, well, it only made sense that it was going to come back and drop off again. So, the APRA changes, why have they brought it in? Because they want to stimulate the market. Why have they dropped taxes for the lower income earners? Because they deserve to be able to get into housing too. And we have had some minor corrections in the marketplace, which means that people can get in and buy properties at the low end of the scale. Will they make themselves wealthy? Absolutely, over time. Will they struggle as an investor if they go into a property and they use negative gearing strategies? Absolutely, they will struggle. They will find out, like I did, owning 7 properties when I first started investing and bleeding $36,000 negative cash flow a year, that there's things that are much better than that. This is why we talk about making sure that if you're going to go into property, and if you're going to be concerned about property prices dropping, that if you're going to listen to the media and you're concerned even more, which I don't listen to the media, then why don't you buy a property that's going to protect you? That's going to protect you by cash flow coming in, regardless of whether the market goes up, down, because there is a huge, massive demand for the strategy of putting micro apartments into larger houses. Now you might say, oh look, it all sounds too complicated. It's not complicated at all. It's just a simple system and process that we talk about, that we do. Christine and I have been doing it for 8 to 10 years now, and we've been talking about it and showing other people how to do exactly the same thing. Why do I show people how to do that? Because you see, I know that we are 1 million self-contained homes short in the next 10 years. So I could go out and I could try to produce those 1 million, but seriously, I really love where I live. I really love the time that I spend here. I don't want to waste all of my time trying to create enough properties for other people. I create the properties that we do for ourselves, but what I really like to do is create the education for people to learn how to do exactly the same thing. See, I don't work from scarcity. I don't work from the fact that I might lose out if I show other people how to do this. I actually work from the fact that if you go out and you show other people to do exactly the same thing that you do, that it makes sense for everyone. It's got to make sense before it makes dollars. It has to affect the community in a positive way before it makes money. It has to do both. I'm a business person. I'm a social enterprise owner. I own a business that has a heart for community that also makes a profit. And I'm very, very fortunate and grateful that I'm in this position. So to learn more, just go to smallistheNewBig.com.au.